Hi, I'm Susannah Johnson Malbreaux, publisher of the Southern View magazine, and today I have the distinct pleasure of interviewing my friend, Chief Robert P. Benoit. Hi, Robert.
Good morning, how you doing?
Fine. This interview is kind of long overdue,
Yes,
I have
it
to
is.
say.
Yes, it is.
Well, I'm excited. So, before we get into the gist of you being the fire chief, what that means and all, tell the audience a little bit about Robert Benoit.
Well, Robert Benoit grew up in Lafayette. I went to school at Truman Elementary from first grade to 8th grade, and from there went to, 7th grade, and from there went to Scott doing integration. Did 1 year at Scott in the 8th grade, and then from there went to Lafayette High for 2 years, freshman and sophomore year.
So at Scott during integration, how was that?
That was an experience.
Really? What grade were you in at that time?
I was in the 8th grade,
Eighth grade.
when they did the transfers.
Okay.
And so from first grade to 7th grade, going to Truman Elementary School, it was only African Americans at that school.
Right.
So going to Scott in the 8th grade was a big change. Not a change that affected me in a negative way.
Right.
It just introduced me to a different environment.
Environment.
So that was an experience. And then going into Lafayette High in the 9th grade, did my freshman and sophomore year there. And of course, we had some issues at the school where there was a fire. And,
Really?
2 fires in 1 year. And the second fire really burned the portion of the English wing. So
Okay.
they had to rezone to get that school back in operation. So
Really?
when they rezoned, I wound up doing my junior and senior at Kenyon High.
Okay. I'm trying to think if I remember, that fire. Of course, I was already gone. But I did want to mention too, like it's interesting that you were 8th grade during integration. I experienced that in high school, so yes, I'm just a couple of years older than Robert. But so as someone that young, that's got to be a challenging thing, especially
Not really, because I've always been an individual who felt comfortable in my environment. I've always been able to adapt to the changes that I was placed or faced with. And so that was just one transition of many that I had to make throughout my life. And I got to tell you that at a young age, in dealing with that, I think it made me stronger.
I was going to say, probably you grew up a little faster than most.
I think you do, especially in a childhood area where a lot of times you're doing things by yourself, and so that helps you to mature, a lot quicker.
Okay. Did you experience any violence during that time?
No, not at all. It was a very calm environment for me. I was always an individual who was, I guess,
You kind of stayed away from that as
shy
well.
guy who was an introvert, and so I only had a handful of friends.
And you're still quiet to a certain extent.
Yes, I am.
Yes, you are.
Yes, I am.
But so you had the fire at Lafayette High. One of the next things I was going to ask was, what is it that propelled you to get into like fire prevention, firefighters?
Well, that's a childhood dream. That's something that I think somewhere around 6 or 7 years old was when I was first introduced to firefighting through a coloring book at school.
Okay.
Looking at a firefighter in a coloring book with the hat and the helmet and the boots. And so I kind of piqued my interest, and I said to myself, I think I would like something like that.
Yeah,
And
the
so
hat, the boots. I could see
Right.
you. Was it the little red?
It was,
Fire
well,
engine
in the coloring book, it was a real fire hat.
Okay.
And they had the boots that were, at the time, they were hip boots. And so he had the boots pulled down, and he had his hat on backwards. And so that kind of piqued my interest.
Yeah.
So it kind of stayed with me all the way up to the time I
Okay.
applied.
So did you share that with your mom?
I shared that with everybody.
With
Everybody
everybody?
pretty much in the family knew that I was interested in being a firefighter. And didn't have any other goals other than trying to get to that point.
Yeah.
And so I kind of used that as my basis for getting my education to get to that point.
Okay, so when birthdays and Christmas came around, were you still getting these little fire gifts and things
No,
like that?
as I grew up, I didn't get any of those. As a kid, I got the toys.
Okay.
And I got the big fire truck with the ladder, but as time went on, I got other things for Christmas. It wasn't that. Most of the time, you get socks, that kind of stuff. That was
Right.
the kind of things they were giving me for birthdays and Christmas at that time.
Yeah.
And of course, Christmas only came once a year back then. It wasn't something that you see every day. Where for kids, Christmas is every day.
Okay. So I was going to say too, with all the different professions and careers available, but you basically said what got you started and what piqued your interest into firefighter. So once you got that pretty much instilled in you, where did you go with that?
Well, I pretty much focused on the environment that I was in at the time. So I continued to go to school and continue to learn how to be a good student. And at the time that I graduated from high school, which was at midterm, I was only 17 years old.
That's really good.
Didn't have the opportunity to become a firefighter at the time because I was too young.
Okay.
And so when I was able to get a job, first job was not too far from my house off at Norton University.
Okay, I was going to say, I think I remember.
It was the Lafayette drug company.
Okay.
That was my first job.
All right.
What I call my first real job. I had a whole bunch of different jobs growing up. High school, cutting grass and picking up garbage.
Okay.
You know,
Did you drive a cab?
No, that was after the fire department.
Okay.
Yeah, that came later on in life.
Okay.
That came later on in life.
I kind of remember, hearing a little something.
Yeah, but that was after I was already in the fire department when I started driving taxis.
Okay.
But got a job at the drug company as a stock boy and worked there until I was 18, and then came to the fire department, particularly this station here,
Okay.
to get an application. And had never met a firefighter, had never talked to a firefighter, had never been in a fire station, and walked in to get an application, and they told me you had to be 21.
Oh my goodness.
So
Somebody's just trying to deter you from your dream.
I went back to doing my normal thing and saying, okay, when I turn 21, I'll try it again.
Okay.
And wound up leaving the drug company to work at another place called Martin Mills.
Okay, I remember Martin Mills.
And I worked in a bleach house where we sold and pressed underwear and t-shirts. And so that was an experience of working over there. But then, at 20 years old, some of the neighborhood friends told me they were going to apply for the fire department. And I looked at her and I said, it's kind of strange. We're all the same age and you got to be 21.
How did they get to apply?
And they had lowered the age limit to 18.
Oh, isn't that something?
Yeah, that worked out for me. I applied, and 4 months later, I was called and given an opportunity to get the job. So went through training, and not realizing what the fire department was all about, because I didn't really do a whole lot of research on it. Not realizing it was pretty much paramilitary type environment. And so when I got into the organization, that's when I learned the ins and outs of how the organization works and how there are different levels and different positions and different divisions. And so I made
that was in what, about 1990?
That was in 79.
79.
May of 1979.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was hired on May 3rd of 1979.
Okay.
And so went through the academy and then just took advantage of learning the trade and that's when my college education started, because they gave us an opportunity to go to college to get some college credits towards certain classes that we needed in the fire service. And doing that kind of opened up a whole new world to me and gave me an opportunity to go ahead and further my education by taking advantage of going to college through some of the funding by the Lafayette Fire Department in the city. And so I did that. As I did that, I continuously progressed within the organization. I had no idea I'd become fire chief.
Okay, so that wasn't a goal?
That wasn't on my radar. I was just happy being a firefighter. I was very enthusiastic about learning the trade and moving up the ranks. That's something I did real quick in moving up the ranks. And so I found a home in fire prevention. After 6 years of working in fire suppression, fighting fires, I transitioned into fire prevention because during that time, that would have been the mid-80s. City of Lafayette was in financial trouble with the auto industry being really depressed. You had a lot of people burning houses, they were burning cars. You had a lot of vacant buildings because of industry had moved out. And so a lot of kids were burning these buildings because they had no place to stay. And so they needed some help in the fire prevention bureau.
Because they had no place to stay.
I'm sorry, no place to hang out.
Okay.
There wasn't a lot of places
All right.
for kids to hang out And so a lot of times kids would use that as a playhouse.
That's
And
dangerous.
it was. And so they were setting those buildings on fire. So wound up going into the fire prevention and started working with the investigators at that time. And then as time progressed, got good at doing that, enjoyed that.
So with the fire
And so that-
investigation, that is like how the fire started?
Right. In fire prevention, you have several different duties. You have inspectors who go out and inspect buildings for fire code violations. They also do public education and educate the people on how to be fire safe. And then you've got investigators. And investigators go out and they investigate fires for two reasons. One, to determine whether or not there's a product malfunction with that particular situation, where we can learn from it. And secondly, if the fire was intentionally set, then their job is to go out there and find the suspects responsible for the crime and bring them before the courts. And so I enjoyed that. Very interesting. I enjoyed that. Had a good time with that. And worked in that field for another 7 years before the opportunity.
Still not thinking about the
Not
fire
work,
chief?
not fire chief. At the time, I was doing my thing, getting myself educated through college, getting my degrees. And at the same time, I was also the union president for the Lafayette firefighters. And so doing the business of that, networking with the administration and trying to take care of the firefighters' needs as well. And of course, doing those course of events, they made some changes in the qualification for fire chief and police chief. And in those qualifications, they decided that they wanted to have chiefs with degrees, with college degrees. And so when he made those changes and those rules and got adopted by civil service, because there was a lot of conflict and a lot of discussion with that, with the changes in the qualifications, it kind of piqued my interest. And I said, well, you know, if I'm going to be a part of the change, then I should apply for the job as well. And so made the decision to apply for the job and was successful in getting appointed.
How many applicants do you remember?
Because they changed the rules and the qualifications, it weeded out a lot of people because a lot of those guys didn't have degrees. And at the time, if I can remember, I think there were 10 of us that qualified to take the exam. And then from there, we were at the pleasure, serving at the pleasure of the mayor, made the decision.
Who was
during
the
interview
mayor at that
At the
time?
time, Kenny Benoit was the mayor. I was mayor of the city of Lafayette. And so I was given the opportunity. And it's been 23 years and I'm still doing
Wow,
it.
that is awesome.
Yes.
That is awesome. So you were talking about the training for the firefighters, fire prevention. Is that done locally?
It's done locally now. When I first started, we got basic training at the training center. At the time, it was on Bertrand Drive next to the community college across from Barton School. And that was a 90-day training course. And then, of course, that was just to give you the foundation, the basics. And then you got into fire suppression, and then you served the working test period, and that's where you pretty much learn, you know, how to master the dynamics of being a firefighter. Well, then, as time went on, we would also get some specialized training, but we had to go to LSU Fire Training Academy in Baton Rouge. And that became difficult as an organization grew to send people on their time off over there to get that training. So what we did was we took the training center over here and just started to grow it, getting people, more people that were qualified to teach firefighting into the organization. And so now what we do is the training academy that we have is one that we train people from start to finish. You know, as we get a young person in the academy, it runs about 6 months. And once they get out, they go through the same process of having to go through a working test period. And if they make it through that 18-month period, then they're confirmed in that position. And of course, that training center not only trains firefighters, rookie firefighters, it trains everybody. You know, we cross-train all of the firefighters. We train some of the volunteer fire departments as well. We also pretty much do a whole lot of other things. We're training various departments in the city in first aid and the use of automatic external defibrillators. The AEDs that we use to start your heart when it stops. So there's a lot of things that the training center now does that we didn't do back then, which is more of what we call cutting edge technology, where we're always on the forefront of making sure something new comes in. We send our trainers to get certified in how to do it.
Then
They come back and they teach the rest of
and
us.
they teach the
And
rest.
so that's what we have going on now, which made it a whole lot easier for us. Now you don't have to worry about having people drive all the way to Baton Rouge or
Right.
somewhere else. We still utilize the National Fire Academy in Emmitsburg, Maryland for special training, but there are some times when we can bring that instructor to us and we get more bang for our buck by doing that.
Okay, so fire chief for over 20 some odd years.
Right, 23 years as fire
23
chief,
years as fire
37
chief,
years in
37
the organization.
in the organization. That's a very long time. So that actually, to me, seems like it would give you an advantage for being able to run the department, having worked in the department for so long. You probably knew some of the challenges.
You know, one of the things I tell people is that I guess because firefighting was a passion for me, I think looking at how I've maneuvered through this organization, through the various ranks and through the times, trials and tribulations, that it wasn't really a hard thing for me. And I believe it's because I'm pretty much working in my gift. You know,
I like that.
It's not something that I have to struggle with in making decisions or looking at how I'm going to run the organization. It's something that just comes naturally. So I've learned how to use that strong point of saying that I think it's my gift, so I'm going to take advantage of it and make sure that I always take the high road and do it the right way.
Right.
So I haven't had any problems. We've had some issues.
Issues.
We've had some struggles,
Mhm.
but those issues and struggles were not of my doing. I was just a guy that was placed here to be able to resolve those issues with the right solution. And
Right,
so I've been able to do that over the past 23 years.
right. And then again, with all the training that you've had.
Right, the
that
training helped
gives
me
you
to
all the
prepare
tools,
me
Right,
for that, not realizing that at the time, some of the classes that I was taking and some of the educational issues that I was faced with as far as for college, it prepared me for this particular job so that I could get in there and not have to struggle in being able to do the job.
that's good. So without any challenges, tell us about some of your successes being fire chief.
I think one of my greatest, I guess, moments or success would be when we made the transition to partner with a Canadian ambulance by getting involved in some of the medical responses. Back in 1998, we were trained in the use of automatic external defibrillators, but the state statute dictated that you had to have a medical director to oversee the operation. So we were trained and ready to go in the use of these items. However, we didn't have somebody that was ready and willing to take on the responsibility of overseeing the operation. And a young doctor by the name of Charles White came into town, and he was a firefighter at a young age in the volunteer department, so he loved firefighting. And he stepped up to the plate and became our medical director.
Go ahead.
And so
All right.
in doing that, we also were able to partner with a Canadian ambulance, which is just like where we decided that we were going to take on some of those medical calls that we call life-saving events, that if you don't have somebody responding to you within the first 3 minutes, it'll be crucial. And so what we did was they helped train us in those areas. Dr. White put together what we call a mass CPR training event in the city of Lafayette. And we used a Cajun dome for that. And what we did was we came up with a way of teaching the public how to do CPR, what we call bystander CPR.
Okay.
Because what happens is, the majority of the time, if you're going to have a medical emergency, it's going to be in the front of a family member. And so we knew that if the family member knew how to do first aid and CPR, then they could start giving you chest compressions and resuscitate you until the fire department could get there.
Right.
And the fire department has a real good track record of responding anywhere within the city within 3 to 5 minutes.
That's awesome.
That's because we have more fire stations located throughout the city. And so we use that coupled with a Canadian ambulance. We have their paramedics on board, and they would follow us, coming with the drugs and the life-saving techniques that were more advanced than we had. So when you look at that chain of events, you had a person who fell out in front of a loved one. a loved one started CPR after dialing 911, we would respond, we'd give you air, and we'd breathe for you. Kid would come behind us, push the drugs in, speak with the doctor, and get you to the hospital. So by the time you got to the hospital, they had a lot to work with. And so what we started seeing in doing that was that your chances of going back home after that medical event or emergency brought you back to your lifestyle without any defects or without any difficulties. Where before we put that program together, the chances of surviving a heart attack or a stroke was limited. You know, and so I'm very proud of that. It met with some resistance at first because the firefighters felt that, well, you know, that's not something that we should be involved in. And some of the medics or the kid in the ambulance felt that, well, maybe the fire department's trying to get into an area that, you know, that goes above their expertise. And so that was just growing pains. But as we started to see the results, which was positive, with the public, us coming to their rescue and saving their lives, then it became a popular thing. You know, the public as well, because there were some times when somebody was having a medical emergency at home and they'd call 911 and the fire department would show up. And the first thing they would say was, I didn't call for a fire truck, I called for an ambulance.
Right.
You know, and so after they realized that we were there to provide that service to them, then they started to buy into it. So I think when I look at overall, you know, what I was able to accomplish in doing that, I think that would be one of them.
Interesting you mentioned Acadian Ambulance because I had a chance to talk with Clay.
Clay
And
Henry, yes.
Clay actually gave us a tour of the facilities and exactly what you're talking about. You know, you can see how all the first responders, you know, are connected like
Right.
to Acadian Ambulance and they dispatched. If you guys have not had a chance to visit their facilities, it is awesome. You know how they've got monitors, and we got to see the helicopter lift off with you know, an incident that was happening, you know, right at that time. You know, so they talk about their response time, like you were talking about. If it's fire, if it's the police, you know, whatever, you can see how all that interacts and
Yes.
and it connects. But no doubt, you know, a lot of training, a lot of expertise goes into that, and he was just ever so proud, you know, to share that with us, and we were in awe, you know, because living here in Lafayette all my life, I really did. I mean, I remember Acadian Ambulance starting, but not to the extent of where they are now. So that was, in fact, a really good partnership, and you know, I think when you know, different organizations partner like that, it's for the betterment of the community as a whole. And like you said, you know, you gotta have those growing pains and, you know, stepping on somebody's toes, somebody else's territory. But at the end of the day, it's about saving lives, you know, for the residents. You know.
And I got to tell you that we network with them on a regular basis. Once our medical director left to pursue other careers somewhere else, we looked to Acadian, and we were able to get Dr. Chuck Burnell, who's also a doctor with Acadian, to step up to the plate and take over as our medical director. So what that did for us, that helped to improve some of the training that we were missing, where now we have a real good network between us and Acadian, where if there's some training that we need, we can go to that facility. If there's some things that they need, they come to our facility. So it's working real well, and we're kind of happy about that.
Right. Well, you know, you were talking about the education, you know, and I was looking at your resume. Okay, he's got this extensive resume, very impressive. So with all of the education, is it required, or, you know, because he has a host of certifications and education galore. You know, so was it that part that's not a requirement?
Some of it's required. Some of it's required.
Took a lot of that after you became chief as well.
Right. Some of it's required, and some of it, it's if you want to stay on top of your game, then you have to go out there and seek it. You know, because firefighting, it's a science. You know, it's a technique that you use, and it keeps changing. Although we know that the basic principle of being able to extinguish a fire is with water. But then as we get smarter and technology increases, there are some things that are made that you can't use water to put it out. or you have to be a little bit more smart about how you're gonna apply that water to it. And if you don't continue to train, then it's gonna pass you by. At our level as chiefs, the job now is technical. It's more dealing with office work, it's more dealing with personnel issues, and it's dealing with how to be able to apply solutions to those problems in a positive way. And so if you just sit there and just think that the education you received 10 years ago is going to carry you through that career, that's not going to happen. You know, you're going to struggle, you're going to miss something. And so when you look at the resume is what I call a growing resume, because you never stop growing. You know, you never stop learning. You know, and so as long as you're going to stay in this business, then you have to stay on the cutting edge of technology and make sure that when something new comes out, you go seek it out, you know, and then you learn it, and you come back and you apply it and you share it with the staff.
So some of the other, I guess, not necessarily challenges, but some of the other duties or the management of the fire department, you know, the budgeting, you were talking about the different firehouses. You have to request money for that and make a presentation to the city parish council. I've seen you go before the council numerous times, you know. I really don't think I've ever seen them grill you. You know,
No,
and I
normally
think you go there prepared.
Well, normally you get grilled when it's a new administration and a new council, because the first year is an education year for those new individuals, and so a lot of times they'll ask you more questions about the line items that you're dealing with. Other than that, it's pretty much a natural flow of occurrence with them. And the key to that is to make sure that you always keep them in the loop. You know, you don't just wait till the last minute to present something to them. You constantly send them an exchange of information so they are always on top of what's going on in your organization. You know, we try to be totally transparent. There are no hidden secrets or anything in the organization, not just for them, but for the public as well. You know, and so when you look at, you know, what drives the organization, it's driven by a set of rules that are put together by statutes of the state of Louisiana and the insurance company. Because what happens is fire departments get graded. And we get graded every 5 years on a scale from 1 to 10. And they look at your fire rating. That fire rating determines what your insurance premiums are going to cost, you know, on homeowners and businesses. And so what happens is when you start to put your budget together, you put it together based on that fire rating. And so that's what dictates where your fire stations are going to be, how many fire trucks you have, how many people you have, where you place those people at, and how long it's going to take you to get to that call for service from the time you receive the call through 911. So all of those things together make up the budget that's presented to the administration and the council for adoption.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask too about the different fire stations, you know. So part of that, you know, I guess what's happening in the community, where fires are.
Well, what it is, and it kind of goes back to history, when you look at fire stations are a mile and a half apart from each other.
Okay.
And that goes back to horse and buggy days. Back when horses pulled steam engines to fight fires. Those steam engines were heavy.
Yeah.
And so the horses would tire out after a mile and a half.
Okay.
And so you say,
Really?
well, if you're tired, let's get another fire station in that area to pick up the slack. You know?
Okay.
And so that kind of stuck. But then when you
when
you look at it, it really works, because with a station being a mile and a half apart from each other, that's what gives us the opportunity to be able to get to you within 3 to 5 minutes. You see, and so what you have is you have that dynamics and the demographics of those stations being that mile and a half apart. You have fire trucks coming from various stations to your rescue from opposite directions, and so that in turn gives us that really good track record we have of being able to get there as quick as possible. That's one of the components that's required. The other one has to do with based on subdivisions. Anytime you build a subdivision in an area and you're going to provide services for 400 or more residents, it's going to require a fire station in that particular area to take care of the needs of that area.
So when somebody is requesting a building permit, you know, they pretty much have to go through.
On the commercial side. On the commercial side, anything that you try to build in the city of Lafayette has to come before the fire department for us to look at the plans, make sure that what you're building, you understand
You
what the
can
cost is
service
gonna
it
be.
as well.
Right, and that you have to follow fire codes. And then now, on residential, because of the First Amendment rights, we have no control over what you build. That's a planning and zoning code issue. The only thing that we get involved in is, once a subdivision is built, we make sure that subdivision has a road wide enough for us to respond on, and also that the fire hydrants are installed in the city of Lafayette to meet the need for the water that we need to be able to extinguish the fire. And then the only other time we get involved in residential issues is if for some reason you are creating a hazard at your home that creates a hazard for your neighbor, then we in the fire service can come in and order you to discontinue that practice.
But someone would have to report it.
Right, and that's usually how we get it, right. You know, other than that, on the residential side, we don't really get involved in that.
Interesting. So again, with the firehouses, you've got like your trained firefighters there. Where do the volunteer firefighters come in? Do we have volunteer
Yes, we've
firefighters?
got 7 volunteer fire departments in Lafayette Parish, and they each operate independent of each other. They have their own chief, they have their own personnel. Some of them are paid people that the small towns pay them to respond to their areas, but the majority of them are volunteers. I would say about 30–35% of those volunteers work for the Lafayette Fire Department.
Okay.
But they go back to their communities and volunteer
And
as well.
volunteer.
We train them to a certain extent. Some of that training is gotten online. Some of it they get from LSU Fire Training Academy in Baton Rouge, and some of it they get from us. The training facility that we have now on Dugal Road, which is across from Acadian Edmonds, is a training center that we use for everybody. Everybody utilizes that training center. We also have what we call mutual aid agreements with the volunteers, to where if we have a big fire in the city of Lafayette, they're going to respond to assist us, and vice versa. You know, we also have agreements with surrounding parishes, such as St. Martin Parish, where they'll come in and use our driving tarmac to be able to drive a train for their drivers. There are some issues they have over there, some props they have over there we can use, so we go over there and train as well. So all in all, that's how we make things happen in the city of Lafayette. Now, there's one unique thing that people don't see, because when they dial 911, a truck is going to show up, but you never know where that truck is coming from. Because we have 7 volunteer fire departments, with Lafayette being 8, we have what we call the Lafayette Fire Protection Association, and that's made up of 8 chiefs, 7 of the volunteer chiefs, and myself as the chief of Lafayette. And we pretty much decide how fire protection is handled in the city, in the unincorporated areas of the parish, and the small towns. And we come together and we make policy on how we're going to distribute response to everybody. So when you dial 911, regardless of where you call it, when you say you're having some type of fire incident, that dispatcher is going to transfer that call automatically to the Lafayette Fire Department's dispatcher, which is in this building. And we will dispatch the closest truck to that call, whether it be a city Lafayette truck or a volunteer truck in Brewster or Youngsville or one of those other areas. And so when you waiting on us, you know, you're not going to realize how that took place, because all you're going to see is the end result of that truck responding to your needs within 3 to 5
we don't
minutes.
care really.
We just want somebody
We
to come
just
in
want
in
somebody
a hurry.
there in a hurry. My house is burning.
Right, exactly.
Come by and, you know, take care and save us, you know.
Exactly. And so that's how that works. That's something that's hidden behind the scenes that we do, that we put together, and we make sure it works in an efficient manner.
You have a very important job.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, but you know, you've been doing it so long, so it's like second nature now, but.
Now it is. There's still some challenges. You know, you still have to deal with you know, an evolving world, and things continue to change. You still have to be able to adapt to that, you know, and go with those changes, and make sure that you always stay positive, regardless of what's going on. You know, because that's the only way that you can survive. You know, in a situation, in an arena like that, you know, you have to answer to the public. You have to answer to the firefighters, you have to answer to the administration, you have to answer to the council, you know. So all of those factors are something that if you don't stay on top of your game, not only will it overwhelm you, but they're going to remove you from the system.
Are you our first African-American fire chief
Yes,
here?
in Lafayette, City of Lafayette, I'm the first one, yes.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Another little bit of history. Let's see now. Let's talk about like community involvement, because I have, you know, One, I like to let folks know that Chief Benoit and I have served on the Martin Luther King Jr. Holiday Committee for like a number of years. And then just recently, you know, you've been involved with a lot of different organizations, but I do want to give a shout out to the Smile RSVP program, because the volunteers there had gotten together and baked cookies for our first responders.
Yes.
For the 911 day observation, 15 years since that horrible tragedy. And we delivered those cookies to the
Yes.
fire department, and you accepted that. And I think that that was wonderful, not to mention that we've had you on our agenda to speak at different programs. I've seen you speak with the foster grandparent. You're out there, and I know you've been telling your story about being fire chief and, you know, being very inspirational and motivational to a lot of people. So having said that, you know, okay, he's got so many organizations that he's involved with. You know, how has that helped you in your development as fire chief? And then how does that, you know, help the community as well?
One of the things that I was told after I became fire chief was that I needed to learn how to give back to the community. And in so doing, I was able to pick a couple of nonprofit organizations that were doing good work in the community and get involved with them. Kiwanis was
I was
one
just
of
going to
them.
say, Kiwanis is one of your big
That's
ones.
where I pretty much got my start,
Right.
with Kiwanis. And then I took on Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers Big Sisters, and United Way, Salvation Army. So I was able to move in all these organizations and bring the fire department in those organizations with me. A lot of times it's all in-kind services, and so there was a need to have firefighters interact with various organizations, kids especially, and so it was a positive occurrence between the kids and the firefighters. So in looking at the good that these nonprofits do in the community, I felt good about it, and so I stuck with it. You know, I'm no longer on Big Brothers Boys and Girls Club. I'm still with the United Way, Salvation Army. I let that go, and so I kind of keep those big three together as well. I think that they are doing a lot of good in the community. Not only does it help the community, but for myself, being involved in these organizations, they have taught me some lessons as well.
Personal growth.
You know, right. You know, there's a lot of workshops that you have to attend. Those workshops increase your level of education.
Right.
Take that, you bring that back to the fire department, you share that with the staff, and you enhance the organization. So it was a win-win for me in those areas, and I can tell you that I can see the fruits of our labor in being involved in that, because we've definitely made a positive impact on the community. I can tell you, when I first became fire chief, a lot of people told me, man, we didn't know the fire department existed. You know, they said, you know, you're always in the news with something, and it's always positive, you know, and so we share what we have to offer to the community. And so to me, I think that's what it's all about, giving back.
Right. Well, you know, you give, you receive, you know, but like I said, you know, you're a pillar of this community, very inspirational and motivational for a lot of young people, you know, so being out there, being involved, I really think it's important. So you've been doing some good things, you know, so keep it up. You know, like I said, even the speaking engagements, I mean, you have like a calendar filled with, you know, upcoming events that,
It's sporadic.
We need Chief Benoit, we need Chief Benoit.
It's sporadic. It feels good to know that people will invite you to come and say a few words at their functions, and so I enjoy that, because not only do I get to talk about the fire department, I get to talk about my challenges as a kid growing up, I get to talk about what's going on in the city, and that way everybody's informed, you know, about how this organization impacts the community.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience? I'm going to, you know, I'll basically take over the camera, because I want to probably share with young folks in the audience if they're interested in getting into fire prevention, being a firefighter, give us some closing comments and, you know, share with, pick that last opportunity to share with the listening audience. So at this point, I'd like to just say thank you so much for the interview. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for coming.
And just to let you guys know, this is an interview for the Southern View magazine. It will be in the October issue, which we're working on that right now. The interview will also be available on our Facebook page and our website. So visit the Southern View at www.thesouthernview.wordpress.com. Like us on Facebook, and it's always a pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right.
We're always looking for firefighters. Right now, we're in the recruitment stage. We're in the process of hiring firefighters right now, and it's a very easy event to become a part of the organization. It's a 3-step process. The first step has to do with taking a civil service exam. So how you do that is you come to the Lafayette Fire Department and you pick up an application, you follow the rules that the application calls for, submit it back to us, and then the state examiner's office in Baton Rouge will call you and give you the date on when they're giving the exam and where they're giving the exam at. They will also give you a study guide on similar questions and answers on the test, just to give you an idea of what it's like, the feel for the test. And once you complete that and you pass that exam with a 75% or better, then the Civil Service Board in that particular city, which is Lafayette, will certify those scores. And once that's done, you will get a letter from my office inviting you to take the second portion of the exam, which is what we call a physical agility exam. That's where you have to run 1.5 miles, you have to do so many push-ups, sit-ups, climb a ladder, and all of those things we give you a work booklet ahead of time so you can go back and practice on how to do those evolutions. Once you complete that, then you come back for a final interview with the interview committee and give them an opportunity to talk to you and ask you why you want to be a firefighter. Once that's finished, then you go on a waiting list. When we start to hire, you get an interview with myself in my office where I will question you and ask you, you know, what's the reason for you wanting to be a firefighter, give you some tips, send you get a physical, get a drug screen, do a background check on, you know, all that comes back satisfactory. Then we send you to the academy and we train you on how to become a firefighter. Now, one of the things that I want to also say in regards to that is that this is not a job where you're going to become a millionaire, but it's a job that has a good pay involved in it. It has good benefits to it as well. You know, I've never seen firefighters in the city of Lafayette ever get laid off, you know, because of a bad economy. So you can be assured that Lafayette is a unique city where government employees though they don't make a whole lot of money, they can make an honest, good living to be able to raise their families because the benefits far outweigh the cost on a salary. So that's pretty much